The NFL has been tarnished by its sluggish response to the long-term dangers posed to players by concussions. While the league admits it may have been too slow to realize the problem, it insists it has always acted in good faith. Now, a New York Times report is calling that into question, and the NFL is demanding satisfaction.
The headline is direct. The NFL used flawed research to dispute the dangers of concussions, a strategy once used by Big Tobacco. That's the conclusion of the New York Times after it found that concussion data compiled by the NFL omitted 100 notable cases, including well-publicized concussions suffered by former quarterbacks Troy Aikman and Steve Young.
The New York Times says the missing cases account for a staggering 10% of total concussion cases.
But worse, the Times compares the NFL's behavior to the tobacco industry, which for years used junk science to refute the dangers of smoking.
The tobacco thing is the big problem for the NFL because that sort of connection is the sort of thing that does not play well in the public realm.
The NFL is calling the article false and defamatory and is demanding that the story immediately be retracted. So far, the New York Times is standing by its story.
Well, actually, I thought the Times handled this really, really well. Instead of just saying we're going to stand by our story, they printed the claims made by the NFL in a story and then did a comment afterwards about, we never stated that, we never claimed that to be true, or we did claim that to be true, and oh, by the way, they said reporting concussions wasn't mandatory. They found reports and said, well, by the NFL's own rules, it is mandatory. So they kind of went point by point by point in this refutation. And as everybody knows, WGBH's Frontline did a piece a year ago, League of Denial, documenting this, even before the New York Times got to this. I mean, the NFL has a problem with this, and it's not going to go away. And I would love to see the NFL take on the New York Times in court, and that would be a good one.
Oh, that would be terrific.
Unfortunately, there probably wouldn't be any cameras once again because it'd be a federal court.
It was an odd story. I mean, it was like, I don't think it was that well edited. It was like two stories. There was a very strong story about all these concussions that had not been included in the study. And then there was a weaker story about tobacco. And I think that the saving grace for the New York Times is that the NFL came back with a response in which they alleged that the Times had made all kinds of allegations that they hadn't actually made. So you've got Deadspin and SB Nation and Sports Illustrated all basically mocking the NFL's response to the Times. So whatever flaws there were with the story, I think the Times got away from the scene without any damage.
But I think you're right. I think that the data part of the story seemed pretty slam dunk, and the tobacco part of the story was very sketchy. It was really more guilt by association. They absolutely didn't nail it down. They even had that obligatory paragraph pretty high up in the story that says, well, we can't really prove anything, but we're going to tell you all about it anyway. And that was a mistake. It really, if someone had just had written an op-ed column saying, here I'm making this comparison, I'm using a simile, then I think, it would have been accepted in someone else's words. But as part of that hard-hitting news story, it didn't fit.
And it's a bad mistake because it raises in the minds of a fair-minded onlooker the question of the paper's broader motives. You got the goods on them here. Why are you throwing in all this other stuff? What's that all about? However, the delicious part of all this from the point of view of a Patriots fan is take out concussions, put in deflated footballs, and here you've got the NFL caught fudging data left and right, incompetent, doesn't even know how to gather data. They get called on it, and they issue this huge legalistic, dare I call it the Wells report. And in fact, Ted Wells, the smarmy lawyer who handled Deflategate, is involved in this too. Really? So it's a victory lap week for Patriots Nation.
Well, I don't have any truck for the Patriots in that way, so Ted Wells is not a smarmy lawyer to me. But what I will say is that the connection between the tobacco is like the worst thing that you can put in anybody's mind. So that is Adam's report is absolutely right. And I think that if you're not going to be as precise as every one of you have said, then just go ahead and either make an outright comment about it or be prepared to do what they had to do, which is to go back point by point. But I'm now wondering if they wanted to go back point by point. So they wanted that kind of response that would allow them to say, all right, this, and this, because they had to know they were going to come back to them and say something. And the last point is that not only is this story not going to go away, there are going to be many, many more stories looking into it as these players themselves now come forward and want to tell their stories and are offering science an opportunity to use their brains as data. So it's not going away.